Today's lesson is Down to Beantown. Hi, everybody. I'm Roger.
And I'm Helen.
And today we're going to continue with our travel unit for the month of November. We are going to Boston, Massachusetts, in the United States. I believe there's actually a Boston in England, but it's not as large and not as famous as Boston in the USA. So if you're traveling to the USA and you've already been to New York, you've already been to Los Angeles, maybe you could consider going to Boston.
Yes, Boston is a very old city. It's beautiful. It's also the city where Harvard University is located. It has a lot of old buildings, not ancient, they're old. They're about 150 years old. So I think a lot of people, when they go to America, they might overlook Boston. They'll go to Los Angeles, New York, maybe Chicago, but Boston is really worth visiting because it has a lot of cultural significance for America.
Of course, there are lots of things to see in that part of the world. And last time, of course, we talked about the Freedom Trail in Boston. Of course, it has these markers on the sidewalk that you follow, and you can come across or encounter lots of significant landmarks like Faneuil Hall, and you can go to the Quincy Market, and you can go to a place where the first battle of the Revolutionary War took place. And, of course, you can check out the Tea Party ships and the museum there and learn all about the history of Boston and the beginning of the United States of America. So we're going to continue touring Boston now. Let's get to it. Let's listen to the first part, and then we'll come back to discuss it.
Now that you've gained insight into Boston's roots, it's time to get a feel for its vibrant present. Make your way to the lively Newbury Street for shopping, dining, and entertainment. There, you can window shop to your heart's content while pausing to appreciate the 19th century brownstones. The district also hosts community activities, so be sure to check out the events calendar.
大家好。第一部分我们看到单字 insight， 这个字是名词，指深刻见解或是洞悉。例如 The discovery gave scientists insights into the human mind. 这次的发现让科学家们对人的大脑有更深刻的见解。或是 The customer research affords new insights into how the company can sell product. 客户调查为公司提供了新的产品销售思路。接下来我们看到单字 vibrant， 这个字是形容词，指充满活力的或是活跃的。例如 Kevin has a vibrant personality, so he is very popular at school. Kevin 充满活力的个性让他在学校很受欢迎。或是 There is a vibrant atmosphere everywhere in this city. 这座城市到处都有一种活跃的氛围。再来我们看到单字 district，这个字是名词，指地区或是行政区。我们可以说 Sarah works in the big commercial district in the middle of the city. Sarah 在市中心一个大型商业区工作。或是 This city's shopping district is unrivaled. You can buy almost anything here. 这个城市的购物区无可比拟，什么东西都买得到。
So even though Boston has a very long and interesting history, it's not all about history because Boston is also about what is happening now. There are a lot of interesting modern things to find out about Boston. So now that you've gained insight into Boston's roots, it's time to get a feel for its vibrant present. So to gain insight into something means to understand something more deeply, to learn more about that thing. Insight, it's actually an uncountable noun, is a chance to understand something. So here, we've had a chance to understand Boston's past, its roots, or how it came about, how it was born. Now let's look a little bit at Boston today, what it has to offer to visitors and what you can do today when you go to Boston. So it has a very vibrant present. Vibrant means that it's lively, it's exciting. So it's not a dead city that's still living in the past.
Right, so we've already talked about the past in Boston, its history. Now we're going to talk about the present. Make your way to the lively Newbury Street for shopping. So this is a place to do some shopping if that's what you'd like to do. You can also go there for some dining, to try some local dishes, and you can try some entertainment. So you can probably see some shows there, maybe a concert, maybe a movie, maybe some street performers. There are probably lots of things to see and do in this part of Boston, Newbury Street.
Right, and make your way to is just another way of saying go. Go to the lively Newbury Street. Make your way to is more of a kind of gently, gradually get yourself over there instead of rushing over there. So make your way to lively Newbury Street where you can do all of these things, shopping, dining, and entertainment. There you can window shop to your heart's content while pausing to appreciate the 19th century brownstones. So you can window shop, which means you can admire all of the goods that are displayed in the shop windows. When you window shop, you don't necessarily have to buy anything. You're just using your eyes to appreciate the goods. And you can window shop to your heart's content, which means that you can window shop as much as you want without limitations until you've had enough of it. And you can also say, for the phrase to your heart's content, you can say something like, well, I don't want the cake anymore. I've had enough of it. So you can eat to your heart's content of what's left. Eat as much as you want.
Exactly. It just means to do it as much as you'd like and knock yourself out. Have a great time and don't worry about tomorrow. So yeah, you can window shop all you want. You could be there all day long. And you can do this while pausing to appreciate the 19th century brownstones. Brownstone is a kind of sandstone, I believe. It's dark, and it is a building material for many buildings in Boston and also in New York City. So, of course, if you can live in a brownstone, that's pretty cool. It's an old building, and the outside is kind of dark. Sandstone is usually kind of light, but brownstone is a darker kind of sandstone. So, of course, it's going to be made out of bricks.
Right. So New York City has a lot of brownstones, or it had a lot of brownstones before these buildings got torn up and in order to make way for bigger and taller buildings. So these brownstones usually are 2, 3, or 4 floor buildings, and they have stairs leading up to the entrance, and some of them have fireplaces. So before, they weren't really for rich people, they were for common people. But today, if you can live in a brownstone in New York, it probably means that you have a lot of money.
Yeah, you probably need a lot of money if you want to live in New York City anyway. And the same is true probably for Boston. But of course, you can check out some of these brownstones that were built in the 1800s or the 19th century. Now, the next sentence here says, the district also hosts community activities, so be sure to check out the events calendar. Again, this is Newbury Street. It's a district. It's an area that's got lots of shopping and dining and entertainment. And it's a district, which refers to a certain area of a city. Of course, in Taiwan, we have cities that are divided into districts. Here in Taipei, of course, we've got the Beitou district. We've got Songshan. We've got Wenshan. Those are all districts. But they don't necessarily have to be a political area. Like in San Francisco, of course, they've got the Mission district and the Castro district, which are just areas of the city that aren't really divided off into an official district. But so this is just an area of Boston. It's a district, and it's the area around Newbury Street.
Yep, and it seems like it's one of the most lively areas of Boston because it has a lot of things that you can do to find entertainment, and it has a lot of old buildings, so it's definitely worth visiting.
Okay, that brings us to the end of the first part of our lesson for today. Let's move on now and talk about the second part.
If you're in the mood for some first-rate street art, there's no better place than underground at Ink Block. This 8-acre space has been transformed into a park, complete with walking and biking paths, outdoor cycling classes, and colorful murals. Grab a bench and do some people watching as you rest your feet for a while.
第二部分我们看到片语 in the mood for 加名词或是不定词，指有兴致或是心情做等等等。例如 Ben is not in the mood for a comedy right now. Ben 现在没心情看喜剧片，或是 I'm in the mood to see a movie， 我现在有心情看电影。接着我们看到单字 mural， 这个字是名词，指壁画。举例来说， Sam painted a mural on one of the walls outside his house at the request of his child. Sam 因为他孩子的要求，所以在家的其中一面外墙画了一幅壁画。又或者说， Murals are a good way to show your talent in public. 壁画是一种公开展现你绘画才能的方式。
We move on to the second part of our talk on Boston. We're looking at Boston today, which has a very vibrant present that is focused on the arts, on shopping, entertainment. So let's say you are in Newbury Street and you have done all of those things. You look at the brownstones and stuff. So if you're in the mood for some first-rate street art, there's no better place than underground at Ink Block. To be in the mood for something means to feel like doing something or seeing something. So if you feel like seeing some first-rate street art, first-rate means top quality. We're not talking about amateur street artists, but really good top-quality street artists or street art, then the place to go is underground at Ink Block.
Yep, so you got to be in the mood for that. You got to feel like doing that. Oh boy, I'm really in the mood for some Mexican food right now. So, of course, this is top-notch, first-rate street art. So, yeah, head to underground at Ink Block. And this 8-acre space has been transformed into a park, complete with walking and biking paths, outdoor cycling classes, and colorful murals. So this sounds like a great place to hang out. It's quite big. Of course, an acre is an area of land that is commonly used in the United States. So it's an 8-acre space. It's quite large. And it used to be something else. So now it's been transformed into a park. Transform just means to change from one form to another. So it used to be something else, maybe a building or something like that, or a factory or something, but it's been transformed into a park. And it's got all sorts of things there, walking and biking paths, classes you can take for cycling, which is like bicycling, and murals, which are works of art on walls.
And in the case of New York, a lot of old warehouses, which are large spaces that used to be used for storing goods, they were transformed at one point into artists' lofts. So artists moved in there and worked there, painted paintings and made sculptures in these old warehouses. So these warehouses were transformed into art spaces. And today, these warehouses, again, are extremely expensive. So they went through a lot of different versions of the same thing. So in the case of Boston, you have a space that's 8 acres big, 8 acres wide, that has been transformed into a park that people can go to enjoy a variety of activities.
And when you go to that park, grab a bench. Don't just hold on to it with your arms. It means just find a bench and sit down, and then you can do some people watching. You can watch people walk past, and you can observe their features and things like that. Maybe you're an artist and you can do some sketching, but you could also rest your feet for a while you're sitting there on a bench, and you can kind of just get a feeling for the place, and you can really enjoy life while you're sitting there in downtown Boston. Okay, let's move on now to the next part of our lesson. We'll listen to it first.
Wrap up your trip with a Red Sox game at Fenway Park, where you can enjoy America's favorite pastime in one of the most famous baseball stadiums in the world. To round out the experience, chow down on a Fenway Frank. If you haven't already fallen in love with Boston by this point, the crowd's enthusiasm for its home team is sure to put you under the city's spell and keep you coming back again and again.
第三部分我们看到片语 round out 或是 round off， 指使点点点圆满结束。像是 To round out the school semester, students will put on a variety show. 为了替学期画下完美句点，学生将会演出一个综艺节目。或是 Theo and Stacy rounded off their romantic evening with dessert at Stacy's favorite cafe. Theo 和 Stacy 在 Stacy 最喜欢的咖啡店吃甜点，来为他们的浪漫夜晚画下完美句点。 最后我们看到单字 enthusiasm， 这个字是名词，指热情或是热忱。例如 I don't have much enthusiasm for parades these days. I think they're too noisy. 我现在对游行没有太多热情，我认为他们太吵了。或是 They have no enthusiasm for spending a weekend in the country. 他们并不热衷要在乡下度过周末。
So to wrap up our talk on Boston, well, there's one thing that you have to do before you leave Boston if you go there, and that is to catch a baseball game. Wrap up your trip with a Red Sox game at Fenway Park, where you can enjoy America's favorite pastime in one of the most famous baseball stadiums in the world. And indeed, Fenway Park is very well known as a baseball stadium, and the Red Sox, even though I'm not very familiar with baseball, but I do know that the Red Sox is a very, very beloved baseball team in America, and it's really a part of American culture, American history.
Yeah, pastime. Of course, the pastime is something that people enjoy to pass the time, and they say that about baseball because, of course, lots of parents and their kids play baseball together. And, of course, it's one of the most famous baseball stadiums in the world. Now, to round out the experience, chow down on a Fenway Frank. So if you round out something, you make it complete, like you do here in Taiwan with the word round, meaning togetherness or unity. So it's a similar meaning here. Round out the experience, make it complete by eating something called a Fenway Frank. You can chow down on that. That's just a slang term for eating something with great enjoyment. And I guess this is a kind of a hot dog or chili dog or whatever that you can get at this ballpark. It will be a memorable experience for you.
Yep. Frank is another word for hot dog, so I suppose they say Frank instead of hot dog here because it sounds better with the name Fenway, because you can do an alliteration there. Fenway Frank sounds like it's something that you can get only at Fenway Park, whereas it's basically a hot dog. Maybe it's dressed a certain way, it tastes particular, but we are talking about hot dogs. And the phrasal verb here, to round out, you can also use it in the following context. As an example, you can say Elsa rounded out her education in art history by doing volunteer work in a local art museum. So she got a degree, for example, in art history, but she thought that wasn't enough. She wanted to add something more to that, which is what you do when you round something out. And she did this by doing some volunteer work in an art museum.
Yep, so indeed, make your experience complete by eating a Fenway Frank. And if you haven't already fallen in love with Boston by this point, the crowd's enthusiasm for its home team is sure to put you under the city's spell and keep you coming back again and again. So you've seen lots of things in Boston, and maybe you're thinking it's interesting, but it's not particularly exciting. We've got stuff back here in Taipei, so Boston can't compare. Maybe you haven't been too excited about Boston. You haven't really fallen in love with it yet. But hey, if you go to Fenway Park, you can kind of feel the enthusiasm of the crowd. That means the group of people that are all there to watch the baseball game. The crowd. Don't add an S to that. You're talking about one group of people in a stadium, so that's the crowd there. And enthusiasm is just excitement you feel about something. You might have great enthusiasm for art, for example, or for music. In this particular case, the crowd there has its enthusiasm for its home team, the Boston Red Sox.
Right. And when you do something, you should do it with enthusiasm. And if you don't do something with enthusiasm, you may not be able to do it well.
Indeed. And of course, you'll have that enthusiasm for the home team, and you'll be under the city's spell. Like a witch or a wizard or something, they have magic powers, and if they control you, then you are under their spell, you are under their control. So yes, it will be a magical experience. You'll be under the city's spell, and you'll fall in love with Boston, and you'll want to come back again and again in the future. Okay, that brings us to the end of our discussion for today. Here comes Hanny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny， 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文一开始写到 Now that you've gained insight into Boston's roots, it's time to get a feel for its vibrant present. 既然你已经深入了解波士顿的起源，是时候体验一下它充满活力的现况了。好，这边我们看到3个重点哦。第一个是 Now that， 它是表达既然、由于，是用来引导原因的从属连接词。也就是说啊 Now that 后面是要接表示原因的子句。那这个子句通常是对方已经知道的原因或者是讯息。举例来说 Now that everyone is seated, let's start the meeting. 既然大家都就座了，那我们开始开会吧。好，除了 now that， 其他还有一些意思相近的用法，像是 since、seeing that 或者是 seeing as 等等。举例来说 Seeing that you've already made your decision, there's no point in discussing this. 既然你已经都做好决定，那讨论这件事情也没什么意义了。好，再来看第2个重点是 It's time... 的句型。It's time 后面可以接不定词 to be 或者是接 for 加名词来表达现在正是什么的时候，是时候要做某事了。那么不定词的前面你也可以加入 for somebody， 像是 It's time for you to take your medicine， 你吃药的时间到咯。另外 It's time 后面可以接 that 子句来表达该是什么什么的时候，这个用法是在强调某件事早该做而没有做的意思，它带有那种假设意味，所以啊 that 子句里面的动词是要用过去式表达的。那在使用 It's time 加上 that 子句的时候呢， time 的前面可以加入 high 或者是 about， 变成 It's high time 怎么样怎么样， It's about time 怎么样怎么样。举例来说 It's about time that Ron took responsibility for his actions. Ron 该为自己的行为负责了，这表示说他早该替自己的行为负责了。那么第3个重点是Get a feel for something， 是说开始熟悉、体会或是对什么有所了解。Feel 在这边当名词来表达对某事物的了解、体会。好，那 get a feel for 这个片语后面常常会接某个地方啊，或是某种活动，也可以接一个名词子句，像是 get a feel for what's going on， 表示说了解发生了什么事。好，那文中的 get a feel for its vibrant present 是指说体验一下波士顿充满活力的现况。那我们可以造一个句子 They walked around to get a feel for the island. 他们四处走走，熟悉一下这一座岛屿。好，那以上是今天重点整理，我们来回顾今天单字吧。
Insight. This book provides fresh insight into the life of Ernest Hemingway. Entertainment. So what do you do for entertainment around here? District. The historic downtown is now a fashionable shopping district. Transform. The old factory near the port has been transformed into an art gallery. Enthusiasm. With a great deal of enthusiasm, the band began to play.
Discussion starter starts now!
Here's our discussion starter for today. The question is, if you were to visit Boston, what would you most like to do and why?
Well, if I were to visit Boston, I'd like to try a big bowl of Boston baked beans because that's what gave Boston its nickname, so I want to see what it tastes like.
Well, I'm interested in bicycling, so I'd love to go visit that park and to try those bike paths, but I'd also like to ride a bicycle around Boston itself. And I would suspect that Boston probably has a bike share program. Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of our program, and please make sure you join us again next time. From all of us here, I am Roger.
I'm Helen.
See you next time.